Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Word of the Rings. And tonight, Pastor Brian and I are going to be discussing episode 4 of Rings of Power. So we've gotten through the first 3 episodes, and now we're going to see a bit more development, except for apparently the Harfoots. We're not really going to see much from them, if anything, in this episode. But we get a lot of Numenor, and then we get a lot with the dwarves. So we'll start talking about some of that. But I think we start off the episode looking at the orcs, and Arondir has been captured. He's a prisoner of the orcs, and then we see for the first time this orc that everyone has been calling Adar, father, and he is introduced by he goes up to a wounded orc. He seems quite disturbed by this. He puts his hand on the orc's forehead, and then he kills him. This is clearly supposed to be like a mercy killing from someone who is suffering from terrible injuries and can't be saved. So he has feelings, and therefore the orcs. So it seemed to me on first watching this, and later it turned out that this was true, that he is like one of the first orcs, right? When the elves awoke by the Lake of Pluvien and under the twilight of the stars, and we're just learning to cope with their newfound lives and bodies and everything, and some of them are lured away in the darkness by Melkor's nasties and ruined, clearly tortured, and then ruined, as Tolkien says, and turned into orcs, which to me was kind of cool to see one of those, because there's nobody else in the show that's really, really old so far except Galadriel, because even Gil-galad is her brother's grandson, and Celebrimbor is Fëanor's grandson. And so, no one among the elves is even close to as old as she is. And even Arondir says he was born in Beleriand, which means he's born sometime during the First Age in Middle-earth. He was not born in Valinor, so he's not that old. Several thousand years perhaps, but not, like her. But this guy could have been like one of those first elves that was there at that lake and woke up and saw the twilight and was, rejoicing and all those kind of things as one of the very first elves to ever exist at the beginning, and to be lured away and turned into an orc. And here he is now, however many thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of years later, however long it's been. Because I don't really know how they're measuring time back before there's a sun and the moon and really even the trees or anything. So, this could have been 10 years or 10,000 years or a million years. I mean, who knows? And he's from then, right? So that's actually was kind of cool. Let's see a character that's like really, really, really old. Brian, your any thoughts on seeing this guy who kind of looks like an elf, but turns out he's an orc?
Yeah, Daddy Adar. But he was a cool character because he's more seductive, not like in, a romantic way, but like because of that, you kind of see this empathy, this connection. I don't know if it's put on or not, but as an elf, he kind of has that ability to be charismatic, although we don't see charismatic elves in this series as much as we should. But yeah, so I mean, I almost, there are parts of me that felt like, oh, follow him. You know what I mean? Like he wasn't as odious and just bitter and vile and, completely empty. At least he didn't come across that way, which could be part of his evil. But so I thought he was a pretty cool character, and the orcs look awesome. I mean, I thought they really look cool in this series. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that orcs often are portrayed just so like one-dimensionally. But they're not necessarily that one-dimensional. We do see in Lord of the Rings, when Sam briefly takes the ring, he thinks Frodo's dead because of the spider attack, and he's wearing the ring, so he's invisible. And he comes across these orcs who are planning what they're going to do when the war's over, right? And they sound like disgruntled soldiers from any army from any time. The big bosses, we hate them. We're afraid of them, and they're always telling us to do this and do that. I don't want to do, I don't want to follow orders. And when this is over, I'm going to set myself up in some mountain pass and rob passersby, and they don't. They're clearly people, right? I'm sure that when Tolkien was in the army, in World War One. I'm sure he heard people muttering and bitching about the, trenches and the trench foot and the fleas and the, all that kind of stuff. And
The
um,
mustard gas.
you know, and he's these guys are just like grunts from any army. It could be Alexander the Great's, army, or the and the Axis, or the Allied powers, or Napoleon, or there's going to be guys who are just the lowest rung, and they're just the cannon fodder and sent out there on the battlefield to die, and they don't like it. They don't want to do that, and so the orcs aren't necessarily as like really one dimensional as people like to think, or how they're often portrayed. So this guy now is a character, and as a side here, I don't know if you know, Brian, I didn't know until a few days ago when I was reading some articles, but they recast that part. So in season 2, it's going to be played by a different actor.
Oh,
Yeah, so I don't know. They're saying, I guess, that maybe the actor who did season 1 maybe had some maybe prior contracts that he had to, commit to or something. I don't know what really, or maybe because he didn't really say why he left, is that he was glad to be part of the show. And it's like, so you could have been fired, or you could have had, that could mean anything. But I thought he was great. I would love to
yeah,
see
that's
him.
one of my favorite performances.
Yeah, and you won't see him again. But yeah, the way that he has this compassion for this orc who's been injured, the way that the other orcs just, revere him, and even, toward the end of the series, I'll just like hop ahead a little bit, where he's looking at the sun for what he thinks is the last time. And of course, the other orcs can't stand the sunlight, but he can, being, I guess, still more kind of elf in a way. Um, and he looks up, and he's like, I'm going to miss it. So he has this plan on what he wants to do to turn this place into like an orc homeland, and he can't do that if they can't go outside in the sun. So he's got to, shadow this whole realm in fire and smoke, so that his people can walk out at any time of day or night. But he's going to miss the sun, and so the fact that we've got this sort of three-dimensional character who has compassion, he has regrets, he has plans, there's things he wants to do, um, is great, and that he's an orc, and a really, 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 really old one, like one of the original ones. So, I mean, I think he's a fantastic character. All right, so we also see in this episode,
Yeah.
that not only does Galadriel somehow convince Halbrand to come back to Middle Earth when he claims he doesn't want to go, but he also teaches her how to be like a politician, and how to not just like run up against the queen, right? But to step back and say, what does the queen want? You know, what is
Yeah.
she afraid of? And how can understand what she's afraid of? And then like basically get her to do what you want. And so Galadriel is then being schooled by Halbrand, who's supposed to be this, young smithy kind of guy, because he makes a sword later, I think, and he's clearly very good at smithing.
Yeah. He makes a sword.
Yeah, and remember, smiths are always bad. That's a good clue. Tolkien,
That's
smiths
right.
always turn
That's right.
bad. I don't know what Tolkien had against smiths, because even in the movies, when we're seeing the orcs at Isengard and they chop down all the trees, and Saruman's like, feed all the trees to the fires, and they're making these huge fires to like forge all these weapons and armor and stuff, and it's supposed to be apparently bad because you're cutting down all these trees and you're destroying the environment to make weapons and armor. And then, well, all the Gondorian soldiers have weapons and armor, and it's like, why aren't their forges bad? Why, when they burn a tree to like make a fire so they could make swords, why aren't they evil? That's what I was thinking during the movies at some point. I was like, so the elves or the orcs are bad for cutting down trees to make swords, but the men aren't. Gotcha. And here we kind of see but we have the smithing thing. But the other smiths, the Numenorian smiths, I guess they're just fine, But now we have this guy who knows how to smith, and knows how to politic, and
Knows how to whisper in the ear
knows how to whisper.
Galadriel.
Yeah, here's how you get what you want, right? And so,
I mean, I wouldn't say he teaches her because she's an elf,
yeah,
but she just doesn't regard it. I mean, I think it's more like reminding her, a little bit
yeah,
of who she is because she's not used to dealing with humans anymore, I mean, she is, but, I mean, it's been a while. It's been a
yeah.
while since she needed to partner with humans,
Mm.
she's kind of imperious.
Well, she throws herself at Gilgalad too, and that's
Yeah.
cat explosion here. Sorry. Um, where that's why he tried to get rid of her, right? Because she keeps running up against what he wants, and then finally it's like, you know what? We're giving you this great boon. We're gonna send you off to Valinor. Bye.
Yeah.
So her zeal and her one-dimensional focus is made people want to get rid of her. And so here's Halbrand reminding her, hey, just stop for a minute, stop beating your head against things, and just look
Yeah.
and see what you can figure out. And then with a little bit of cleverness, you can get what you want. And yeah, and she does, and she's going to get what she wants. At which point, though, we're also going to discover that the Numenorians have a Palantir, and that the reason they're all so scared of the elves right now is that when the ruling family touches the Palantir, they see this vision of water uh, going over everything. So they're seeing the whole Atlantean end of their island, but they don't know, right, if it comes about because they reject the elves, or does it come about because they don't reject the elves? What do you do, right? You've got that self-fulfilling prophecy thing going on now. Now I believe I know the future, but gee, am I going to be like Oedipus's parents and make that future come true by casting him out into the wilderness? You know, and
Butterfly
then
effect. Yeah.
he doesn't recognize his mother and father, so he ends up killing his father and marrying his mother because he doesn't know who they are, he doesn't know who he is. Um, so are the Numenorians like sealing their own doom when they told the elves to go away? Or are they protecting themselves? And they don't know. And this is one reason why we've had this schism in the royal family where some want to be faithful and some want to tell the elves and keep the elves away. So we can kind of see now where some of this tension about, hey, elves, what do we do? That has been kind of focused on Galadriel. There's an elf on our island. Oh my gosh, we're all going to die, kind of stuff.
It's kind of funny because once again, it's kind of like, who are we? Like, what do we stand for? And that's what the Numenorians seem very, very lost, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, right, what I mean, and confused and without rudderless, really, and so it's kind of funny. But does the Palantir, is it always right? Or is it sometimes a deception or what could be, or I don't know.
I think we're supposed to feel that they can tell you what will happen or what could happen.
Could happen.
So I don't know. We do get a nice scene of, it turns out to be a dream, but where the queen is participating in something like naming ceremony for newborn Numenorians. So these mothers have brought their newborns, and then the queen holds them and asks, what name have you given her? And so I like that. We saw a little bit of ritual with them previously where they had pulled their boats up on shore. Everybody got off the boats, faced the ocean, and intone the sea is always right. So they don't necessarily have a religion exactly, but they do have these little rituals that they go through, and those are the kind of like little cultural details. Those are the kind of things that really make world building, right? Because you can always, everybody can always eat stew and ride horses or whatever, but it's that those little things like here's the naming ceremony, and here's some little thing that the people on the ships do. So those are like little things you can put in that really help round out your world, and so I'm really glad that they're in there.
Yeah. And I know it's not this episode, but I can't remember. We see some little Harfoot. We see Harfoots have little rituals
Well,
too.
We saw that in the last one where they were
right? So,
reading the names of people who've gotten left behind. Although sometimes it turned out to be like wolves got them or something. So they said why, like wolves or whatever. And then everyone's crying and they say, we'll wait for you. So they have their little rituals as well. And we're going to see in this episode, even the dwarves have this ritual where Disa is singing to the stones to try to get them to release the 4 dwarves that were in a particular place where they were mining, and there was a rock fall. And so she's singing to try to get the stones to agree to those four dwarves being released alive from their stone prison, basically. And then they are. And during release, all four have been pulled out, all four are alive, And so, maybe this is because Disa sang the stones and they really like her voice or something. But I like that they have those rituals. So we just have a lot of little world building things there. They're really nice.
Very cool. Very cool. The Balrog didn't get to him yet.
Not yet. He does. Yeah, there's going to be a Balrog, but we already know that. There's no keeping that secret. We all know eventually that Khazad-dûm was going to be consumed by a Balrog, and so at some point, um, you know, but not yet. Right now, Khazad-dûm is a going concern. It's a lovely city. It is kind of dark in some places, but considering they're living under a mountain, it looks pretty cozy. And I don't know if I'd mind really living there. And they even have these skylights. So Durin's growing that tree where he and Disa live. He got that seedling or whatever from Elrond, he says, and he's been growing it. So that's obviously some light coming down from above. So, they have natural light in there. They have all these other lights and fires, and it looks like it's not such a half bad place. It's a nice city, and you actually see other dwarves and more than just two or three. So for the first time, besides Numenor, I kind of feel like we have a somewhat populated planet here. I mean, when we have hardly seen any elves, around Gilgalad, and then we mentioned that before, that there's like 15 elves in Eregion or whatever, and there's like just Celebrimbor and a couple of assistants in Linden, and they're like, I think we've seen like 15 elves in this show, maybe like 25 elves now. You think there'd be a few more, but the Numenorians, we've seen some crowd scenes, and now these dwarf things we've seen. Gatherings of dwarves of at least several dozen or whatever more. And it feels more like there's a city with actual people in it, where the elf cities don't seem like they've been populated.
It really feels alive. I mean, which I'm not as fond of it as you are. Just I'm a light guy. I mean, put me where the elves live, but even as much as they annoy me sometimes. But it is. It feels very alive. It feels very warm, cozy, alive. Ancient, but also blessed. I do like that. It's a nice. That part of the episode was a very warm part, and Disa makes a lot of it. She's
great. I love her character. Yeah. She's fantastic, and she seems to be like a very good match for Durin. She supports him, and she knows him pretty well, so she's able to tease him, and but also she seems like she's a very supportive spouse, and he clearly loves her, and she loves him, and so like we have this lovely love match, but they also seem to be well matched in terms of intellect and what they want to accomplish, and she's going to be right there, supporting him whatever he needs to do to be king someday. So she's great. She may be my favorite character. Adar is right up there though too, because he is more complex than usually orcs get, portrayed. Because it gets convenient for viewers and also readers if the bad guys aren't that three-dimensional, because there's not so much worry that you're going to lose your audience thinking, oh man, should they have killed those people, right? But Nazis serve that in movies very well. No one worries too much if your hero kills a bunch of Nazis, and no one's going to worry too much if your hero kills a bunch of orcs. We don't necessarily have to feel for them. So we get, but one thing we do get that's not in the books, they've made up this character of Iarian, I think that's how they've been saying her name, who is Isildur's sister. And so he really should have an older brother, Anarion, but apparently Anarion's not going to be in the show, or maybe he'll be introduced later. Maybe he's off and doing something else, and Elendil just hasn't mentioned him yet. But now there's his sister, so I'm not clear what her point in the series is going to be, but at least we see like this lovely brother-sister relationship where they're like supporting each other and what they want to do, and she wants to be like in one of the guilds, and so she gets in, and Isildur is really happy for her, and so she's got her career path that she wants to take, and we just see this brother-sister support system, which I thought was really nice.
Yeah, I found a lot of the Numenor stuff kind of the slow part of the episode, but the chemistry between them was good. It was, good.
Mm-hmm.
I was rooting for her.
Yeah, so hopefully she'll escape with brother and father and come to Middle Earth eventually, I guess. But we'll have to see what her part of the series is going to be, since she does not exist in the Tolkien universe.
I hope they didn't do all that exposition just to have her flooded.
The drowned. Yeah. Yeah, because the Queen right now is the only woman we've seen. Really, there's been like people in the background or servants like 49 or something. But
True.
But as far as speaking roles, people who like have names and are going to do stuff, it's Iarian and it's the Queen. But I was happy also to hear of this is the episode where the Queen decides, hey, because now Galadriel's gotten a little more clever, or has stopped to at least exercise cleverness at Halbrand's kind of direction. The Queen decides, hey, we're all going to go off to the Southlands. I'm going to raise a force, an expeditionary force. We're going to go kill a bunch of orcs. And who's with me, basically? I mean, she's not the one. I think Pharazôn or somebody else is reading the present thing out to everyone. Elendil's reading it. But he says something like, we need the sons and daughters of Numenor to volunteer. And so I was glad that we're not just like, hey, boys, let's go have a war. But it's like, hey, people, we can go have a war. So, hopefully, I mean, they want women to be more than camp followers. But maybe there are, women soldiers on Numenor and women mariners, at least with the sister women guild members. So hopefully we see more women from Numenor doing more things. It's not just male characters who are going off and having all the adventures.
Well, I mean, we've got Galadriel looking like Saint Michael or something, especially in this episode. So, or at least Uriel or something, Yeah.
Well, yeah, she's out there in their nice bright armor and a white horse and everything. So it's nice that the Numenorians had a white horse to give her to ride, right? The horses are kind of interesting, just the sense that like Isildur apparently has this horse Beric. I guess he raised him and trained him or whatever, and he says at some point in this episode that if he goes somewhere, my father won't let me take Beric, and it's like, okay, so he's really close with this horse, right? That's also another interesting point just to put in. Like, I don't really see pets so much. Like, no one sees a cat or a dog or something. But there is this bond between Isildur and Beric. Him and his horse, his boy and his horse. So
it's being Gondor someday.
Yeah. So here horses are because horses in fantasy just tend to be used by like cars or even like bicycles or whatever. You get on one and you ride it forever, right? Horses never get tired in fantasy. They never have to stop to eat or drink or get a roll or have a sleep, and they just run. At least in Lord of the Rings, when Shadowfax does that, it's explained that Shadowfax is like the king of all horses and he can never get tired. He's this special horse that can do all that. But even so, like the Rohirrim ride to Gondor in like 3 days and seem to be galloping their horses the whole time. And it's like, they're not cars. They do have to sleep and eat, and they have to rest. There's only so, and you can't run them. You can walking, you can go so many miles a day, but you can't just. The horse isn't going to run for 24 hours, and they do often seem to do that in fantasy. It's like we just need to get these people somewhere, stick them on a horse. The horse just runs. The next thing, the horse is still running, and then when we get there, the horse is still running. They're like, yeah, they don't do that. But at least here we have a horse that we have a name for, and a guy is like apparently a guy's particular own horse. So that was kind
I
of
felt
nice.
like it was really contrasting how he betrays. I mean, these are sailors, right? And so what's his love of horse, But so I felt like that was a good little contrast they threw in there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and now he's upset. He's destroyed his friends' careers too, but now they're all going to volunteer to go and be on this expedition. So one thing we haven't talked about yet is with the dwarves is apparently Durin and his father, who is also apparently Durin.
Durin the third versus Durin the fourth.
And I think the last Durin is Durin the seventh, so there's going to be a few more Durins later. But I'd have to check, and I can't find my copy of the Silmarillion right now. But I don't think that the Durans follow each other that closely in time, but of course we're crunching down. I did have to look up like how long it's been, and so like in the actual Silmarillion in the Second Age, like the rings are being forged around the year 1500 or 1600, but Numenor isn't consumed by the sea until like 3300. So the fact that these things are going to happen within the same lifetime of these human characters, obviously the elves, since they live forever, that doesn't matter so much. But we're going to have Elendil here for not only during the time of the forging of the rings, but then also the time of the downfall of Numenor. So we're crunching at least 1800 years of history now. So the fact that we're kind of doing the same thing for the dwarves, I guess is fine. But if I recall correctly, and if I'm not, hey, somebody put it in the comments. But there were 7 dwarf fathers, okay, and each one founded a dwarf city. So Khazad-dûm was founded by Durin, one of the 7 original dwarfs that Aule made. And so when there is another king called Durin, it's supposed to be like a reincarnation, so that not every dwarf king is named Durin. It's only special ones that are believed to be like the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh coming of the same guy. So, and I don't know how the dwarves determine that, if they feel like, oh, the next generation, it's going to be a reincarnation, whatever. I don't know how the dwarves figured out, but so the fact that we got 2 Durins here in a row is, I don't think is canon, but we're killer crunching together a whole bunch of centuries. So, I mean, what are we going to do, right?
It helps make the split between father and son, it adds a little bit because it's like you have my name, you know what I mean? Whereas if you know what I mean? Like, so I feel it gives a little more. I mean, I think it's stupid, but it gives a little more motivation to the third, about why he's so angry that the fourth is so defiant, because it's like you kind of expect him, you've got my name, you're, all that stuff. So I don't know. I feel like that helps it. It still annoys me, but
And here they reconcile, and they're of one mind now. They think the elves are plotting something, and I think it's pretty clear at this point that Elrond's not plotting anything,
right.
But he has superiors who apparently are, and both Durins want to know what that something is, and so he's going to agree to go with Elrond to go back and meet Gil-galad and talk turkey about, opening up more relations between Khazad-dûm and Eregion. So he's going to go with the blessing of his father to see what the elves are up to, really.
It seems so weird to make both Galadriel, but especially Elrond, seem so dense, or like so clueless. I mean, that's just, it's earlier, right? Like I'm thinking the fellowship time, but like still, it's just so weird. There's such powerful elves. Well, he's half elf, but still, you know what I mean? It just seems weird.
Yeah. And we do get an interesting, I love these little bits they're putting in for character development. So Elrond does have this discussion with Durin about how he'd like to have just one more discussion with his own father, right? Because, there's only like, if you read The Hobbit, there's very little backstory in there. It's very clear, there and back again, and we don't get a lot. But Elrond does say this line about Eärendil was my sire who was born in Gondolin before its fall. And that's kind of all the backstory you get from Elrond in The Hobbit. But yeah, Eärendil was his sire who was born in Gondolin before its fall. So yeah, Eärendil the Mariner, he is the Evening Star. That is the Silmaril on the prow of his ship. So when he left to go to Valinor and was able to convince them to, join the war against Morgoth, he can't come back to the human realm. He's not allowed. But he can have his ship placed in the stars, and he's a mariner now among the stars. And so Elrond is never going to speak to his father again, because this dude is now the Evening Star, basically. And I don't know if he'll even speak to his mother again, because his mother lives in this tower just off of Valinor, and at times she's allowed to like take the form of a swan or something and to fly up to the ship and to visit her husband. So his parents have really weird fates. I mean, really bizarre. His mother can turn into a swan, and his father is up there being the Evening Star. So, I it's just interesting that it comes up. So he's having this chat with Durin about how, when my father
But you
left,
get a little religion. We get a little more religion going on.
yeah. And so, but
Yeah, a little more religion going
I
on.
wish my father's the evening star
Apotheosis going
now,
on.
and I sure wish I could talk to him again. But then I thought he's looking down on me or whatever. And you're like, okay, but boy, your family history is weird,
He rides across the sky in his ship, or something. He goes on,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, his parents are the stuff of
Fun
legend,
stuff.
right? That's all myth. This has been thousands of years now, and people maybe they still tell the story of the woman who loved a man and turned into a swan to fly up into the stars to be with him. And it's the kind of thing that's going to get turned into a myth, right? And if he ever wanders by some settlement where they tell the story, he'd be like, "Well, that's my mom." You're telling stories about my parents. So
It's funny.
his parentage is just, he's got these fantastic stories. But the end is just because I wish I could talk to my dad again. So please don't waste your time with your father.
I mean, that's this whole episode. These are all quite, they're cool, but it's just a lot of talking. I feel like it's waiting for Godot in this episode because it's like, all right, we're gonna leave, right? We're like almost to the point now. It lets us know we're about to have some plot happen. But the theater director in me feels like, let's go. We can't. Why not? Mm-hmm. We're waiting for Godot, right?
So the humans are waiting for this message from Arondir to say what Adar wants of them. The Numenorians are just now starting to raise the army and get the ships together to have this expeditionary force. And the elves and the dwarves are kind of doing this little political dance, and the dwarves want to know what the elves are up to, and Elrond's clueless is what the rest of the elves are up to. So yeah, things are about to happen. So next time we'll be talking about episode 5 and what happens there. So we hope you'll join us again. We hope you enjoyed this one. If you don't like what we're doing, put in some comments. If you do like what we're doing, give us a comment. Surely like and subscribe. I'd like to have a few more subscribers. I wouldn't mind if that ticker went up just a few, just to make me happy, right? And certainly, if you want to be on Word of the Rings and talk about Rings of Power, drop me an email or send me a message or put in a comment. Tell me how to get hold of you. We'd like to hear from some other people who didn't like the same things that we liked, or maybe like some of the things we liked, but overall didn't like the show as much as we liked it, whatever. We'd like to hear your opinion, and if you want to come on and talk with us about it, you can certainly do that. We invite you to join our little roundtable here and tell us what you think. So, Brian,
I feel like talking about it really enriches it. Yeah, that's what I'm saying is even the parts that annoy me or whatever. I mean, I just have ingrained instincts about storytelling, but definitely rewatching it, talking about it adds much, much, much to my appreciation and enjoyment of it. So, and I'm much more looking forward to the second season. Although the end of season 1 really had me ready to go. I hate having to wait. I want to binge it all at one time. Of course, then I cry when it's over.
Yeah, it's I think October is when we should get season 2, and they were able to finish filming, I believe, before the strike. So they do have that in the can, and so hopefully we will still get it in October. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you. Bye-bye.